So Sony have finally revealed their cards that they've been holding so close to their chest over the past few months. And their cards are basically two new consoles. So we have the PlayStation 4 Slim and the PlayStation 4 Pro. Now straight away guys, I'm going to basically completely brush past the PS4 Slim because as the name suggests, it's pretty much just a PlayStation 4 Slim. And that basically sums it up. So for me personally, hit with a resounding thud. So let's move on to the PlayStation Pro. For those of you that are a little bit confused as to what the PlayStation Pro is, it's basically what has been codenamed the PlayStation 4 Neo for the better part of the last 6 months. And basically the Pro is Sony's souped up PlayStation 4 console, roughly twice as powerful as what the base PS4 console is. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifications of the box because to me personally that's rather dreary stuff. Here they are on screen if you want to have a look for yourself. So onto the reveal itself. So basically the big heads at Sony roll out onto stage, pop the Slim up, boring, rather disappointing stuff, and then they reveal the Pro. And the way they revealed the Pro was a little bit vague, and they didn't actually pop up at any point solid specs on the console. However, we do now know what the specs are, and we're going to dive into those very shortly. A couple of other key points from the reveal was they were very quick to point out that this is the machine that's for the gamers that have adopted 4K now. This is the machine where they're going to be pumping out the higher visuals, the higher frame rates, the higher resolutions, but at the same time they were quick to point out that this is not their new generation of console. This is just a souped up PS4, hence the name Pro. And in a very similar fashion to Microsoft, they were very quick to assure gamers that if you choose to stay with the existing base PS4 model, you're not going to be left behind. The same experiences will be available on both consoles. Everything is staying unified, friends list, chat, multiplayer, it's all exactly the same. It's just that one console is for the 4K gamers. Now onto the power of the console and 4K gaming that this console has been specifically built for. Now if you think I'm throwing 4K around a lot, guess what? I'm not throwing it around nearly as much as what Sony threw it around, and they even admitted that 4K is a bit of a buzzword, yet they still slung it left, right, forward and center in basically every single fucking sentence. 4K, 4K, 4K. But not once in their reveal did they ever say the word native 4K gaming. They even basically admitted that it's not going to be a native 4K system. And I'll give you a quote that came from Mark Cerny himself, who is the lead hardware designer on the PlayStation 4 Pro. And this is what he had to say. 4K TVs have a staggering 8 million pixels of display resolution, and brute force rendering techniques can of course be used to support these displays, but they have unfortunate consequences for console cost and form factor. With PS4 Pro, our goal has instead been to foster streamlined rendering techniques. And that's it right there, isn't it? Streamlined rendering techniques. And in case you're not sure what that means, he's basically saying that they're going to be upscaling a resolution that is below 4K to 4K. It's not going to be native pixel for pixel 4K directly from the box to the TV. So as you can guess, this is when I'm going to give my opinion on the PS4 Pro. So basically we live in a time where we're kind of between formats as far as HD TVs go. We have your standard 1080p and we have a lot of people now adopting 4K TVs. So Microsoft and Sony are caught in this weird ground between still not being able to quite hit 1080p consistently at 60 frames per second, and now you have 4K that's not even on the horizon. 4K is happening now, like people are adopting it, it's affordable. They've kind of been caught flat-footed with these consoles that are just underpowered. And in my opinion, Microsoft have done the right thing. One, they've released the Xbox One S, which is now the base Xbox One console. So that'll be for you gamers that are choosing to stick with 1080p TVs for the immediate future. And next year, later down the line, they're releasing the Project Scorpio, which is actually 2 entire teraflops more powerful than the PS4 Pro. And this is coming directly from Microsoft. It's going to clock in at 6 teraflops. Now, there's still a lot of speculation as to whether 6 teraflops is enough to cut the mustard when it comes to 60 frames per second 4K. So if we're debating that, then what is 4.2 teraflops on the PlayStation 4 Pro going to do? It's sure as fuck not going to be hitting 4K natively, is it? So I'm finding it a little bit baffling as to what's the point? What's the point in releasing a box that's targeted at an audience who have adopted 4K TVs, and this box isn't actually powerful enough to deliver that? I'm just not seeing the point. Maybe they just think consumers aren't going to be willing to pay the premium price that they're going to pay for the Scorpio to actually natively hit 4K. So maybe they're banking on the fact that, well, yes, we're going to be a lot cheaper than the Scorpio, but we're going to be upscaling most of the way to 4K. So unless they've ironed out those kinks that you get when upscaling resolutions, they might be in a little bit of trouble. And you just have to look at the current Xbox One versus PS4. Now with those two consoles, yes, most of the time they are both upscaling to 1080p, but generally the PS4 is usually upscaling much less than the Xbox One, and a lot of the time it's 720p versus 900p upscale to 1080p. And just looking at the Xbox One in comparison to the PS4 with all your cross-platform games like Call of Duty and Battlefield and all that, it's just not as crisp. It looks a bit like foggier and blurrier, like someone's kind of rubbed a bit of Vaseline over your screen or something like that. Now, if we're seeing this with a very small difference in resolution and upscaling, what are we going to see when we have the PlayStation 4 Pro having to deal with a whopping 2 teraflop difference in power? How much upscaling are they going to have to do to get this thing at 4K? And are we going to be seeing the same issues with upscaling like we do with the Xbox One upscaling to 1080p? And yes, I am aware that Sony did state in their press release that they're leaving it up to developers as to what they want to do with the machine. They don't have to have 4K if they don't want. If they want to have 1080p but have better textures and visuals, then it's up to them. But I'm coming from the point of view of that this is a box for the gamers that own 4K TVs. So what's the point in having this box if it's not going to be 4K? Now, I don't know, guys, this is all just speculation at the moment. For me personally, the PlayStation 4 Pro has been, as you can guess, a little bit disappointing. I thought we were going to see them come out blow for blow with Microsoft and even the playing field out. But I guess, I don't know, it's like Sony are having this like post-traumatic stress disorder from the PlayStation 3 launch, releasing that thing at such a premium price, and just nobody would touch it like it had the plague or something like that. So maybe they're really banking on the fact that they're coming out into the market a year before the Scorpio. They're going to be dramatically undercutting it in price, and maybe they have figured out the upscaling issue. Maybe they are going to be able to upscale consistently and avoid getting those issues that you traditionally get with upscaling images. Now, do I think the Scorpio or the PS4 Pro are going to be flops because they are going to be targeted at 4K gamers? They are going to cost more? Probably not. I actually think the PS4 Pro will probably sell like hotcakes, at least for the first year. However, once the Scorpio comes out, I'm not really sure how that ball game is going to play out. I think it really depends on whether Sony have ironed out the issues with upscaling to 4K. If they can get it close enough that in comparison with the cross-platform games that you can't see a dramatic difference, if it's a negligible difference, then the cheaper price point is going to get those gamers. But what happens later down the line? The PS4 Pro's been out for 2 or 3 years, Scorpio's starting to stretch its legs, and it's really flexing its muscle with that extra 2 teraflops. What is Sony going to do then? Are we going to see another Sony console a year after the Scorpio releases? Is the next one going to be their true 4K console? Yes, I'm disappointed that we're not seeing Sony come out and match the Scorpio blow for blow and level the playing field with both consoles being true native 4K. If Sony can deliver a much cheaper machine that is offering an image quality-wise that is almost on par with the Xbox Scorpio's native 4K, then maybe they're on a winner. Maybe they're lining up at the batter's pitch and they're about to knock it out of the park. It's a really hard one to pick as to who might come out on top, who's going to have the legs to stay in the game long enough with 4K, what's going to happen in 2 to 3 years' time. And I feel like Sony and Microsoft are just kind of throwing shit at the wall to see what's going to stick. Alright guys, that's my opinion all said and done. And I know it sounds like I ripped the PlayStation 4 Pro a new one, but at the same time, yes, I'm disappointed that it hasn't come out the gate bursting with power, matching the Scorpio, but at the same time, you know what? Props to Sony if they have figured out the upscaling and they can match the Scorpio visually with a negligible difference. Share your own opinion down below, guys. And you know what, if you think you have above average knowledge on upscaling and how exactly it works, and maybe you have a theory as to what Sony's up to with this whole upscale game, then let us know. Also, let me know, are you going to be buying a PS4 Pro? Are you going to wait for the Scorpio? What do you think of the Pro in general with the lack of power in comparison to the Scorpio? Let me know, guys. I'd love to hear. As always, guys, you can find me on Twitter, so hit me up. If you've enjoyed this video, let's hit that like button. Let's give me a sub. Let's get the community growing a little bit. I'm Sully, and we'll talk in the next video.